And I want to welcome you all to the Willie A. Dees College of Business and Economics Closing Bell Speaker Series. Thank you for joining us this evening and for your continued support of student success and professional development. It is my distinct honor to introduce tonight's guest speaker, Mr. Frank McCain, President and Chief Executive Officer of the United Way of Greater Greensboro. Mr. McCain is a seasoned nonprofit and financial services executive with more than 25 years of leadership experience, advancing community impact, philanthropy, and organizational excellence. As president and CEO of the United Way Greater Greensboro, he leads strategy, governance, Way of Greater Greensboro, governance and equity-centered initiatives focused on economic mobility, education, and community well-being. Previously, he served as Vice President of Community Investment and Impact at United Way, co-developing nationally recognized service models, and as Vice President for Institutional Advancement at Bennett College. Earlier in his career, Mr. McCain held senior roles in the financial services sector, including positions with TIAA, CREF, AIG, UBS, Payne Weber, Merrill Lynch, and First Union Bank. He is a proud graduate of our illustrious North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, and a committed advocate for equitable, community-driven solutions. So please join me in welcoming our closing bell speaker for this evening, Mr. Frank McCain. Can I get a round of applause?
Well, that's very kind. Thank you for that introduction to my homeboy. We had a conversation before we started. I also hail from Charlotte, North Carolina, so it's good to be here. It's always a great time to be in the presence of Aggies, and so Aggie Nation is a family. And although I haven't been a student at A&T for many years, I hopefully, like you will down the road feel as if you're always a part of the university. And when the university calls and says that there's something that they need for you to do, that you answer that call. And that's a result of me being with you today. So I find it a privilege and a pleasure to be with you for the closing bell for the Dees School of Business. I see many of your faces on here. I just wanted to open up by just kind of giving you a few remarks. I mean, we all are aware that, February is Black History Month, and A&T has a lot of rich history as it relates to Black history and the Civil Rights Movement. Most recently, I'm sure we've all heard about the passing of our fellow alum, brother Jesse Jackson recently. And my father, of course, being one of the A&T four. And so I just kind of wanted to share a few things with you before we got started, and just sort of tell you a little bit about maybe who my father was and some of the things that he talked about and expressed when he was here on this earth. So for those of you who don't know, I am the eldest son of the late Franklin McCain Sr., one of the A&T four. And my father and his three friends, four teenage boys from A&T, on February 1st, 1960, sat down at the Woolworth's lunch counter right here in Greensboro, North Carolina, and stood up for what I'll call their human dignity. Those four freshmen were not celebrities. Nobody knew who they were. They weren't wealthy. They weren't powerful. They had no level of influence, but they were just simply students like you who were willing to risk it all, including their lives, so that future generations would hopefully not have to endure what they did during those days. What they demonstrated through their demonstration was that they had a lot of energy, a lot of passion around what they were doing. They at the sit-ins, it was really based on them doing a lot of strategic thinking before they went down to that lunch counter. They took a risk assessment. In business terms, it was a market disruption, brand transformation, I mean, it was, really leadership under pressure. Because you have to remember during those times, if for what those teenage boys did, they could have been killed. So they understood something that I think every business student must understand today, which is that systems only change when someone is willing to challenge them. Otherwise, they will remain the same. So if you don't speak up, if you don't challenge them, then they're probably going to be the same. So my father often said that that they didn't do it because they were brave. They did it because they were tired. They were tired of injustice. They were tired of waiting, and they were tired of having to compromise. And I think as future business leaders, you will face moments when the spreadsheet says one thing, but your conscience says another. And I think it's in those moments your degree that you get from A&T won't be what defines you. It will be your values. And I think in our current situation that we're seeing on a national level, I think we see where values sometimes do not come to the forefront in a very positive way. So the marketplace that you're going to be working in rewards innovation. History rewards courage, and the rare leaders who change the world understand really how to align both. They know how to be innovative, and they know how to have courage to be innovative. So today, as the CEO of the United Way of Greater Greensboro, I get to see daily how economic inequity continues to shape opportunity. We at United Way, we talk about revenue, we talk about profit margins, we talk about growth. But I ask you this, what is growth if entire communities are left behind? So what is growth like if you're going to leave an entire community behind? And most often that community is comprised of people who look like you and me. So at the United Way, we focus on elevating people out of poverty through what we call 3 pillars: education, financial stability, and health. Those aren't abstract ideas, but they are the infrastructure for opportunity for everybody. So we know that when families are financially stable, that children perform better in school. We also know that when children succeed in school, communities grow stronger. And when communities grow stronger, businesses thrive and they want to be part of your community. So you, as business students at our illustrious North Carolina A&T State University, sit at the intersection of influence and responsibility. Let me say that again. You sit at the intersection of influence and responsibility. Many people think that the Greensboro sit-ins were impulsive, and they were not. Like I told you earlier, those guys were strategic in thought. They studied the issue, they rehearsed, and they were very, very intentional with everything that they did. The A&T Fort analyzed the risk of going down to the Woolworth's lunch counter on February 1st, 1960. They were prepared for retaliation. They understood the optics, and they understood the economic pressure that existed during that time. They knew that if enough students participate, not just the 4 of them, but they knew if they could get it started and they can get enough students to participate and get enough customers to withhold dollars at F.W. Woolworths, then that system would be forced to change. Bottom line, dollars rule the earth, and people don't often listen to you until you affect their wallet or their pocketbooks. So economics is a leverage at all times, and you have to always keep that in mind. So as future CEOs yourself, future entrepreneurs, future innovators, I think you have to ask yourself a couple of things. How will you use your leverage going forward, now and going forward? How will you use your influence? Many of you will have currently influence and will have influence going forward. And how will you use the access that your college degree from North Carolina A&T will afford you. How will you use that access? Will you keep it to yourself, or will you open the floodgates and open a pathway for new people to come in and be able to come behind you? I hope you choose the latter. So, success today cannot be defined by salary alone. So I know many of you are working, and I mean, not working, but you're in school and you want to get a job, and you probably that bullseye that you're shooting for is that salary, and that's important. But that does not define success alone. If you graduate from this great institution that we call A&T, and your only purpose is accumulation of wealth, then you have truly missed the transformation. Real leadership asks, who benefits from my success? Who is excluded? Who is included? It also asks, what inequities am I willing to confront? The A&T Four were not trying to become famous on February 1st, 1960. That's not why they went down there. They simply were just trying to become free of all of the inequities that existed during that time. So you are Aggies, and that means something. People admire Aggies. They sit back and they observe how we operate, how we flow. We most oftentimes set the trend. And so the A&T campus for you is not just a place of education, it is sacred ground. Every time you walk across the yard, I don't think you call it the yard anymore, but every time you walk across campus, I want you to remember that students your age once risked expulsion, violence, and even death to try to address the inequities of their time. So you, upon graduation from A&T, you inherit more than just a degree. You inherit a responsibility. You inherit a responsibility to help build inclusive companies, to invest in underserved communities, to advocate for those who need you to advocate on their behalf. And when you're in your workplaces, you have to always maintain a level of dignity, and that dignity should become non-negotiable. So when the moment comes, because it will, when you must decide between comfort and conviction, I hope that as Aggies, as proud Aggies, as graduates of North Carolina A&T, that you won't choose comfort, you would choose conviction. So with that, I will end. Wanted to share that with you.
Thank you, Mr. McCain, for sharing that. And again, we are extremely appreciative of you taking time out of what I know has been a busy schedule for you today. And I will say I had the pleasure of meeting you and your lovely wife several years ago on a interfaith trip to Israel. And I had always been in awe of the name and the work and just the leadership that I've heard about Frank McCain throughout the community. And so, I've seen you've led across nonprofit, higher education, um, financial services. How has your leadership philosophy evolved, and what core values have remained constant throughout your career?
It's a good question. I think for me, when I look back across my journey in nonprofit leadership, working in higher education and financial services, my leadership philosophy has probably evolved from when I started off. I wanted to prove my level of competence, and I no longer lead with that. But now I think it's really about building capacity in others. Early in my career, I focused on performance as well, meeting metrics, hitting targets, delivering results, trying to do perform in a way in which my boss recognized me. But over time, I learned that sustainable impact really comes not from individual achievement, but it really is about surrounding yourself and cultivating strong teams, where you create a level of shared ownership in the work that you do, and that you promote collective accountability.
Mm.
And so, when we talk about what might have remained constant through my entire career, I guess there are three core values. One would be integrity. Do you do what you say you're going to do, especially when it's difficult to do? So if you tell somebody you're going to do something, do you get it done? Number two, I think, is around service. Leadership is stewardship. It's about responsibilities to others. It's not about status. So service is really about um, um, giving of yourself to those around you, to your community. And I guess the third core value is and I guess this was ingrained in me as a child, but it's really around this thing called equity. I have a saying that I need to be the voice for the voiceless, and what I mean by that is that there are decisions, big decisions, that affect a lot of people that are made around corporate board tables, in a corporate boardroom, around the board table. And so oftentimes, people enter into conversations really based on what's best for them, or what's best for their own pocketbook, and so forth and so on. I believe that opportunity should not be predetermined by people's zip codes, their race, or their income. So what does that mean? That means that I think that if you're going to be equitable, that equitable means that everyone has a fair shake, everyone has a fair opportunity, and everyone does not start at the same place. And so oftentimes I have to remind people that equity sometimes for some people starts here, and for other people it starts there. And how do we get this person up to here so that then we're equitable and it's all fair game? So my purpose, I think, has become clear over time. Leadership is just not about position; it's really about the impact that you can have.
And you shared something that I think really ties into what I wanted to follow up with you on now, when you talked about something that was ingrained in you early on, and you referenced earlier in your initial remarks about systems only change when someone is willing to challenge them. And, I think that has really resonated with me. And I wonder, growing up as the son of Frank McCain Sr., one of the Greensboro Four and a leader in the sit-in movement, how did that legacy shape your perspective on leadership service? I mean, you talked about system change and influence and responsibility. Like how much of your growing up in the house with Frank McCain Sr., one of the names that we celebrate on February the 1st every year, like what did that do for you in terms of developing who you are and the work you do today?
That's interesting because growing up in my home, the eldest of three children. I have two younger brothers. Our father was simply our father,
Mm.
and there was certain guiding, I call them leading principles that he followed in rearing us. And sometimes we thought, maybe he was being a little bit too hard, but he had a job to do. And
Yeah.
so, and now as a grown man and with children of my own, I understand better, what he attempted to do and what he actually successfully did. So, growing up the son of the late Franklin McCain, I think shaped my understanding of leadership in profound ways. Our father taught us that leadership requires moral courage.
Mm.
And what is moral courage? I think that's standing firm when it's uncomfortable, unpopular. Sometimes you have to be the outcast. If you really, really believe in something, you have to really dig your heels in and be able to state your case and do not and aren't willing to sacrifice your moral character for the lack thereof of someone else. I think preparation in anything that you do is a requirement. And so just as the A&T 4 prepared and were strategic about going down to the FW Woolworth, it showed that they were not impulsive. They really thought it out. They thought about all the what ifs. And so preparation would be another. And I think maybe the power, I think, of collective action. Change happens when you can align a lot of individuals around a shared purpose. And obviously, you think about, even on a college campus, you think about, I'll use college fraternities and sororities as an example. Those organizations are comprised of individuals who are unique in their own right, but as a collective body, they really have the power to move the needle. And that is one of the benefits, I would say, of student organizations or any organization, is that collective impact or that collective action of many people moving in the same direction with the same purpose. And then I think another thing was around responsibility. And so I think what he meant was, is that you have a responsibility that if you see injustices and remain silent, then you are part of the problem. And so, it has been my philosophy that if you're sitting in a room with me, you don't have to really guess what I'm thinking. I'm probably going to share that with you. And so when I think about his legacy reminds me that leadership is just not about recognition. It truly is around responsibility. It's about responsibility. The sit-in movement. Keep in mind, the sit-in movement of those 4 students were teenage boys. I mean, they weren't adults; they were teenagers. And the sit-in movement was driven by teenagers, not seasoned executives. And I think that's very important to remember as students at A&T. And one of the things that my father used to often say is that, if you really feel compelled about an issue in your heart, you need to act on it. You do not need to wait on the masses, because the masses will not come. So you might have to move forward alone. You might have to move forward with 2 people. And in their case, they moved forward with 4 people. But look what those 4 people's actions resulted in around this nation. So I think every generation is presented with a movement. There's opportunity for a movement right now. I think the question is whether we'll meet it with courage and with clarity and commitment, pretty much like those 4 gentlemen did on February 1st, 1906.
That's great wisdom, insight, and hopefully our students are taking notes and listening to what you're sharing, because that is absolutely the kind of wisdom and knowledge that we want to share with our students during these Closing Bell speaker series. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to turn the floor over now to Miss Sierra McDaniel, so that she can take us further into the program.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sierra McDaniel. I'm a senior business administration and marketing student here at North Carolina A&T. And I just wanted to thank you, Mr. McCain, for all of those insightful remarks. We're now going to move into our question and answer session. So all students can now submit questions using the Q&A portion on Zoom, or if you would like to ask your questions directly, just click the raise hand button and I will call on participants in the order that you raise your hand. can start off with a question and then we can go from there. Okay, so my question to you really like deepens on the impact that you may have had on A&T campus and the people that you were speaking to or met on your way. So like what mentors did you have while you were on college that kind of made your way through A&T's campus more insightful or just let you learn a lot throughout your time here?
That's a good question. I had quite a few mentors. Ironically enough, some of my mentors were my peers, some of my college classmates. One of the great things about a school like A&T is that it affords you the opportunity to meet people from all over the country. And I had traveled a lot as a youngster, but I can't say that I really had an opportunity to have one-on-one interaction with people from different parts of the country. And so I was just amazed at the differences in how people approach situations and how they thought about things. And I was always intrigued to better understand what made people tick, what made people react to things, what got people excited. And so I believe that everybody on this earth is given a talent. Some people find their talent earlier in life. Some people find talent in other people before they find it in themselves. And I found a lot of talent in my peers that were at A&T. And so some of those same people to this day that I met when I was a freshman there at 17 years old are still very good friends of mine, still mentors, still people that I bounce ideas off of, and respect their opinion. But I also benefited from people like the equivalent of my doctor, your Dr. Caldwell. I mean, we had doctors. We had Dr. Caldwell like professors at A&T when I was there, and they encouraged us to think outside of the box, and they challenged us in some of our thinking, and they allowed us to challenge them in some of their thinking. And as a result of that, what it did was it opened up my mind to being receptive to opposing views, which has served me very well in my career. I would say as a youngster, if you didn't agree with me, I probably was quick to come to the defense of whatever it was that I believed in, my point of view. But now I would say I do a much better job as a result of those times at A&T of listening to people and really trying to understand where they're coming from. And sometimes you'll find out that people, their point of view might be better than what you're thinking about once you really understand where they're coming from. So, so I think it was a combination of people, but obviously, I had a mother and father at home. I had the privilege of having a mother and father at home. I learned at A&T that was not the case for the majority of my classmates. The majority of my classmates did not have two parents at home, but that did not make them less than. Oftentimes, it made them stronger than some of us who had two parents at home. So, I had the privilege of having two parents at home that were one a graduate of A&T, obviously my father, and then my mother, who was a graduate of Bennett College, who sort of were always our sounding board as we were growing up and even into adulthood.
Thank you for that. We're going to move on to Robert Snipes.
Good evening, Mr. McCain. My name is Robert Snipes. I'm a first-year honors marketing student. And first of all, I wanted to say I appreciate you taking your time to speak with us. I think that your speech was very inspirational, and it reminds us that what we're doing is not just for money, but it's to really make a change. And like you said, to really be disruptors in systems that we think are not right. And so I really appreciate you sharing that with us. My question is related to philanthropy, because I heard in your bio that you have some experience in that. I would like to do that in the future, and I was wondering if you have any tips for getting started with philanthropy.
Well, Robert, that's a great question. And so let me start off by saying that you ended by saying you want to do that in the future. And I would encourage you not to wait to in the future. You can be a philanthropist now. You can be a philanthropist with $1. You can be a philanthropist with your time. You can be a philanthropist with your talents and skill sets. Philanthropy is all encompassing. It's really around what is it that you have that you're willing to share or give to support a cause that you believe in. And I would say to you as I think you mentioned you were a freshman at A&T, that there are numerous causes that exist right there on your campus that you could become engaged with. So I'll use this as a point of privilege. I currently serve as the chair of the Aggie Athletic Foundation, which is the fundraising arm for athletics for A&T. And we are in need of every penny, every nickel, every dime, every dollar that we can get our hands on in order to stay competitive in athletics and to be able to support our student athletes holistically. And so there's an opportunity for you to give of your financial resources, what little or however much you might have. But it's also an opportunity there for you to say, I don't mind being a volunteer. Can I, do you need someone to work donor cultivation events that happen on campus? We are always looking for students because donors and alums and people who give to the university like to have interaction with students and understand and hear your voice. And so there's always an opportunity for that. And then, the staff of the Ag Athletic Foundation, for example, is 2 people for a university our size. We need 3 more full-time staff members. But in the interim, anyone who wanted to volunteer, there's always opportunities to volunteer. So I would just say to you, look for opportunities, whether it be what I've just described or other opportunities or things that you might be interested in on campus. Go have a conversation with the leaders of those groups and say, hey, I believe in what you're doing. How can I help you? And I think you'll find that people will open up a lot of doors for you. And as a result of those doors being open, it will open up your mind and create within you a sense of responsibility going forward to always be philanthropic, because it's a privilege to be a student at North Carolina A&T. There are probably, if you're in the freshman class, if my memory is correct, there were over 50,000 applicants for whatever 1,500 slots or they were made available for freshmen, whatever that number is. So all those other people who wanted to be students at A&T did not get that opportunity at the first time they applied. So to me, I think that that all of you and me too, and all of us have a responsibility to give back to A&T if we don't give back to anybody else.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer.
You're very welcome.
Losa?
Yes, you said it right. Good evening, Mr. McCain. My name is Lalosa Arabor. I'm a sophomore business management student, and my question was regarding your work at United Way, and I was wondering what insights have you learned from interacting and working directly with the Greensboro community, and how have they impacted how United works?
So before I answer that question, listen, tell me where you're from. Always do this. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Tampa, Florida.
Florida. Lovely, lovely city. I love Tampa. So thank you for your question. I think the answer to that is that I will tell you that when I came to A&T as a student, I had no intentions of making Greensboro, North Carolina, my home. I had what I thought at that time were greater aspirations, which included living in places like, New York City or Washington, D.C., and a very minimum going back to Charlotte. But that was not my fate. That was not my destiny. For those of you who don't take advantage of a great opportunity that you have on campus through the career placement services, I would suggest you do that. Go over to Murphy Hall, sign up. Because when I graduated from A&T, I had, I think, 7 or 8 job offers, and they really were all across the country. And so I had to make a decision. And obviously, part of that decision was based on finances, but it was also based on what perceived opportunity I saw with all those job offers. And the job offer that I saw the most opportunity with coming out of school landed me here in Greensboro. And I would say that it probably was the best decision for me. My wife and I, who's also a graduate of A&T, have made Greensboro home. We've been able to rear 2 wonderful children here in this community who have since left, one living in the state of Florida and the other one having lived in Colorado and Philadelphia. But Greensboro is a great community. It's a caring community. People here care about this city. There is a very solid African-American middle class and upper middle class community that exists. So there is a sense of community within a community. There's opportunity here. Greensboro is also a city of a lot of firsts. There's a lot of first things that have happened here in this city. Greensboro has a very rich history. And I think those firsts are a result of creating an environment where people can feel included and feel like there's opportunity. And as a result of that, my work here at United Way, again, we're focused on helping people get out of poverty, get on the path to self-sufficiency. And, obviously we never ever have enough money to do the work that we do, but we never really ever fall short on volunteers to help us move the needle. And so the combination between people being generous with their financial resources and then being generous with their time, you sort of weave those two together, then we've managed to have a very successful operation.
Thank you so much, sir.
You're very welcome.
Well, on behalf of the College of Business and Economics, we want to thank you, Mr. McCain, for sharing your leadership, journey, and wisdom with our students and guests, as well as we're grateful for your time, your voice, and your continued commitment to the community. And thank you all for attending tonight's Closing Bell Speaker Series, and we wish you a wonderful evening.
Thank you for having me. Everybody have a great evening. Aggie Pride.